All right, it is 12 o'clock. Eyes up, Guardians, and welcome to Planet Fest 21. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are about to start our panel on exploring the solar system in Destiny 2. I am Sarah Al Ahmed. I am the digital community manager at the Planetary Society, which means I run all of our social media. So if you ever want to, talk, just send me a message on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. We're all over the place. I am super happy because today I'm here with Jason Sussman. He is the art director at Bungie for Destiny 2. And I've been wanting to have this conversation for such a long time. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited.
Seriously. I mean, I have been such a fan of Destiny since the original Destiny came out. We honestly went out and got our PlayStation. That was like the special Destiny PlayStation. I even have, like my tiny little guns and
Oh,
stuff that I
nice.
bought as souvenirs from the game. So I cannot tell you how much I love this game and how beautiful it is.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Can you tell us a little bit about, what's your job at Bungie and kind of how did you find yourself in this role?
Yeah, so I started my career as an artist, a world artist, environment artist, and then moved into art direction. And right now I'm the art director for our live releases. So the release just went live. I was art director on that release with Kaitel, and the Cabal Legion is now in our system. And so yeah, that's what I've been doing since I became an art director during Black Armory, and so that was my first swing at it. So yeah.
All right, so this is a really nerdy thing, but the Black Armory, that whole that whole expansion, we loved it so much that we actually named our cat after a character in the Black Armory. Her name is Ada, named after
Get out
Ada
of here. That's
Young.
awesome. That was the first. Actually, funny thing is because my background was in environment art, and Ada was my first character to ever art direct, and so like that was a ton of fun working with Patrick Bloom, who's an amazing concept artist, and the team at Vicarious Visions to make her become a real thing. So I love Ada. That was a lot of fun.
That makes me so happy.
That's cool. That's really awesome. That's cool to hear. That's neat.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So what other video games have you worked on other than Destiny? I know you've got like a huge, history with this.
Yeah, so like before Destiny, my first game to work on at Bungie was Halo 3 and then ODST and Reach, and then I worked on a lot of the multiplayer maps and the PvP DLC content that was dropping. And then prior to that, I worked in another studio called Terminal Reality, and I worked on games like Blood Rain, Ghostbusters, Spy Hunter, Blair Witch, and Fly 2K, which is actually talking about simulation and real world stuff and incorporating that in a game. That was a flight simulation game, and actually one of the first games that I worked on building environment art. So
Such a fun thing. Like I imagine it's a really great time creating art for all of these games. And
yeah,
you've got a lot of games in your history that are kind of centered around, space-based, first-person shooters. Like why were you kind of drawn to, space as kind of your place to explore in gaming?
yeah, honestly, like I think like every other kid that was born in the 70s, Star Wars was a huge factor, like at taking, deep space and then the mysticism of the force and all these things was really inspiring. And then honestly, I'm a sucker for science fiction and space travel, and I really love hard sci-fi. I love movies like Gravity, the Solaris, and I'm really into The Expanse. I don't know how many other people are, but I love that series. And
Seriously.
so, yeah, just the idea of traveling into deep space and exploring, and combining that, in Destiny specifically, combining that with our narrative is just a lot of fun. There's a lot of room, a lot of playroom there. So as an artist.
Here comes Ada.
Hey, Data cameo. It's awesome.
That was super funny. She wants to be part of the fun too.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, it's really funny because honestly, I think a lot of us, kind of got into the love of space because of science fiction. And, for me, it was Star Trek. I literally love Star Trek so much that I grew up and, went on to go into astrophysics. And I really do wonder how many people today kind of, they get their first kind of visceral experience with space through video games. And I feel like, the communities you can build there, it's just a wonderful place to really kind of explore space other than, looking at these beautiful space images we get from these probes. So, and I think the Expanse too, between the Expanse and Destiny, like those are the two I always think of when I think of the solar
Oh,
system.
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we actually take a look at some of these beautiful, beautiful parts of the game? I've entered presenter mode so I can show everyone. Are you all seeing this beautiful picture of the Earth I have up right now? Just going to assume you are. So Destiny is based in our solar system, and it's just, I cannot tell you how beautiful it is. You want to tell us a little bit about, kind of what kind of game is Destiny? What is the experience for people?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Destiny is takes elements of a few different genres. So we have kind of this multiplayer shared world environment, like something that you would see in an MMO. We take elements from an RPG like stat building, leveling your character up, loot collecting, talking to NPCs and getting story, and then it's all grounded in what Bungie traditionally does, which is a rich FPS sandbox. Like our sandbox and our first person mechanics are kind of what we're known for, and so kind of having that as a foundation with all the other elements kind of entwined around it. Yeah. If I were to, the mechanics of it, that's the mechanics of it. Yeah,
I know, right? There's so much there to explain, really. I mean, like, it was my first person shooter. I mean, obviously, like, we kind of played Halo at LAN parties in the past, but it wasn't until I was like, solar system based first person shooter, I'm in on that. So Destiny is kind of, way off in the future for humanity, about 700 years in the future. Why did you pick that point in time, and kind of how did you think about what life would be like in the solar system then?
Yeah, I think we wanted it to take place in the far future, and there's no exact date. We roughly say like around 700, 900 years, and we intentionally kept that huge distance between Destiny's present and the real world past, because Destiny honestly should never be about resurrecting famous people in time. It's more about our setting feeling unique. Even though it uses the idea of Earth and humanity as a remote, rarely mentioned past. I mean, at the core of the game, like humans have journeyed to Mars to discover the Traveler, and over time, the Traveler causes a golden age of humanity's technology and way of life. And this is letting them travel through space with ease, right? Expanding the human lifespan and helping humans colonize other planets. And we're setting this all in the mythic science fiction world, but it allows us to kind of expand our known space.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the Traveler, just so people have an idea of what this is, the Traveler is kind of this beautiful ball, and I remember when I first saw it, just thinking like, it's so simple and yet it's perfect. Like what is this Traveler creature you've created?
Yeah, so it's the inscrutable being imbued with phenomenal powers of light. It's the true origins are unknown. It acts as a cosmic gardener, visiting barren worlds and transforming them into beacons of life. It encountered when it encounters an intelligent species, it often leads to miraculous technological and cultural development. And so it's the force that changed our system. It allowed us to be able to travel out onto the planets that surround us that now have breathable air and gravity. Yeah, it's a source and it's also the source of the ghosts, the things that bring Guardian's life. And so its presence has changed everything around us.
Right. Well, here, let's take a look at the first time that humans encounter the Traveler. I love this clip.
We called it the Traveler, and its arrival changed us forever.
Yikes. I still get chills every time I see that. Just the idea of rain on Mars. Yeah, me and all my friends were actually at another convention when we first saw that trailer, and we were all gathered around the one cell phone watching it together. And I remember kind of choking up about it. Just, I don't know. I really hope we have that kind of future for humanity out
no
among
doubt,
the
right?
stars.
Like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So of course, you mentioned that the Traveler is the source of Guardians' powers in this game. Can you tell us a little bit about, who are the Guardians? What do they do, and what are they fighting for?
Yeah, I mean, it really starts with the ghosts. They're born of the Traveler, and in a moment of conflict, they're born when there's a moment of conflict or cosmic upheaval, and each ghost seeks out and binds itself to an individual, and the ghost serves as the conduit of the Traveler's light, and it allows the Chosen to have powers to manipulate physical reality, such as self-resurrection and elemental magic. And then the chosen beings, they're known as light bearers or guardians. And the guardians have 3 different classes. You have a Titan, a hunter, and a warlock. And each class can be from a specific race.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the human, awoken, and exo races as well. Those are different backgrounds that you can choose for your guardian.
Here, just a visual for people. The exos, I think, are really cool. I love this idea of humanity trying to extend their lives so they can go out and, continue on this fight in the universe by putting their brains into robots, essentially. Like,
Yeah,
I really do wonder if that's a potential reality for us. But altered carbon aside,
yeah, right.
I feel like I relate to this idea of the Guardians because the setting of this game is in a time after humanity has explored our solar system and kind of been beaten back. We're hunkered down on Earth again. We no longer have our empire out among the planets, and I think this moment, this idea that we have faced hard things together, and it's through the strength of our communities that we can do great things is really powerful and really resonates, especially today when we're facing such huge issues. And in the world of space exploration, like, no one can do any of these things alone. So I think, this idea of community in space and looking out for each other really resonates with me.
Yeah,
Also,
so it's protecting humanity, right? Like, that's what they're charged with, They've been gifted with these abilities to protect our system, protect humanity from the threats that are oncoming.
Mm-hmm. One of my coworkers actually asked me this the other day. They wanted to know how it is exactly that the Guardians are surviving the radiation of space. Like, if they're going out there among the stars, like, what is it exactly about them that allows them to, stand near Jupiter and not die?
Yeah, I think it's that space magic, it's that the light that the Travelers imbued in them allows them to do things that, we're actively trying to figure out how to get around in reality, right? It's allowing them to do the fantastic. The presence of the Traveler and the ability the ghost gives and allows them to do fantastic things.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I just got to say, this is my character. I love playing a warlock. Do you have like a favorite class that you play a lot?
So I played all through D1. I played as a warlock, and into D2, and because I love floating forever, like, I just love that the fantasy of being a space wizard is pretty rad. But then when Forsaken came around and the Cade story, I was like, I gotta be a hunter.
Gotta be a
And
hunter.
so I made, and if you don't know, it was a tragic loss in our narrative to see Cade die. But he was a hunter class, and so I played a hunter. So now I haven't gone back. I probably will at some point here. I tried a Titan for a bit, but there's just kind of that skippity hoppity thing that the hunters got going on. It feels fun. So I love the supers. So
for me, it's the capes. It's just the capes are awesome.
Yeah.
So Destiny is based in our solar system, but you could have based it anywhere. Like, why did you go with our solar system specifically?
Yeah, it's really about, from an artistic standpoint or a creative standpoint, it's about grounding it in the familiar to allow the unknown to feel even more bold and grand, right? If you have something that when something foreign appears, it definitely creates this juxtaposition. And so that was kind of the core reason. There's a lot of information out there, thankfully, due to science and research and all the probes. And so, like, grounding it in reality helped us out a lot, And it's a good spot to start from and maybe push away from, right? Like, you always have home. And so
That's an interesting idea for the future. I would love to see the game expand out into other places. But of course, we started on Mars. Is there a reason why you chose, Mars as the location for the traveler to first interact with the humans?
Yeah, honestly, Mars, it inspires imagination. It has, throughout modern science fiction. I mean, for the longest time, and it was immediately recognizable, and we wanted a recognizable location to juxtapose the unrecognizable traveler agent. Like those two things together just were very compelling, and so that was kind of at the core. And there's a lot of research that was happening during the time throughout the development of Destiny. Like we were getting all these images back, like while we're working. I was actually the destination owner working on Mars. And so like I was trying to get all the information that I could. And so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that is an interesting question for me, kind of like how do you go about selecting, Mars is an obvious choice, but how do you go about selecting other locations in our solar system? And then once you pick a place, say like Europa, you want to go to Europa. What
Yeah.
is the process of, turning that science into these maps? What research goes into it?
I mean, most of the time it's honestly it's based on what excites the team or where the narrative is going. And sometimes it even, it can start with an idea and not really a planet. And then sometimes it starts with a planet. It goes either way. But it's really just a synergy of the team and kind of the excitement of what we want to touch next. So,
Well, let's actually go look at these places because we just got to put this in context for people. These maps are beautiful. So you can get in your awesome spaceship. This is the spaceship I've been using since the beginning of Destiny 2, just because I love it. And you can jump to your other planets. We'll start with Earth. I mean, wow. And of course, if you get close to Earth, you'll see these beautiful aurorae, which look very similar to the ones that we see on the International Space Station. Did you guys actually, kind of just watch through videos and then go, I want that. I want to put that on Earth.
totally. I mean, I think it's, honestly, we have an amazing team all up, and we also have an amazing skybox team, which they handle all these orbit screens and the skyboxes you see on the destination. And so they grab real world elements, they look at those for reference, and then they put them through the Destiny lens, right? That mystical science fiction lens that we have, where we kind of make things a bit bolder, and adjust just the composition a bit to make it really resonate in the game. So yeah, absolutely. We look at real world reference all the time, and the more of that stuff that keeps coming out, the more we consume it, right?
I cannot wait to see what you guys are going to do in the future with all of these new missions, especially at Mars. I mean, 3 missions coming to Mars within the space of 2 weeks is just unbelievably exciting.
Yeah, we're glued to all the intertubes.
Just this morning, the new image of Mars from the Hope probe from the UAE just blew my mind. I wish I had time to put it in this PowerPoint so we could look at it. But so on Earth, I said this a little bit earlier, but kind of the humans have been fought back, and they're now mostly existing in this place, the last city, which is hanging out under the Traveler. And you can go to the tower, and this is the place where, it's kind of like your central hub, the place that you hang out with everyone. And I think it's really interesting since this pandemic happened. Me and all my friends, the place we primarily hang out is here in this tower in Destiny. You kind of having that same experience, now that you guys have all been at home, like, do you all get together in the tower?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually last night I was prepping for this talk today, and I had my whole crew was like, "Are you not going to get in right now? Like, we're gonna." I was like, "No, I gotta prep this talk." Yeah, no, I play nightly. I play with my kids. I have 2 boys, and so we are our own fire team. And so we play very often. But yeah, it's a place to definitely socialize, right? Like it's the last safe city in the game. And you get these beautiful views looking out over, the humanity, huddling next to the Traveler.
Seriously, I honestly do spend a lot of time right there at the very edge, looking out over the Traveler, standing next to Zavala. Just, I'll leave it on sometimes just because it's beautiful. Hang out, pet the cat.
Yeah.
And of course, there's some other locations on Earth. Here we have the Cosmodrome. Is it actually modeled after the Baikonur Cosmodrome, where Roscosmos and other agencies launch their rockets?
Yeah, so we looked at a lot of that reference, and again, this is just an example of Bungie. We're always trying to push kind of to see the world on a broader scale. and look at different areas across the globe and people that are, moving science in some direction. And the Cosmodrome had some unique qualities that we really wanted to tell the story in D1. And so like it was a great opportunity to do so. And it had some cool architecture and cool bits that we definitely utilized during the creation of the Cosmo.
Right. I remember that first moment waking up, running by all those rusty cars and the kind of, what would happen to a place if it had been sitting around covered in plants for a long time. It's really cool. And of course, there's also the European Dead Zone. There's another location on Earth. But what I'm really excited to talk about is this moment we actually get out into space. And, the closest thing to us is the moon, obviously. But as we look at this image of the moon, I mean, you can already see it's a little different. It's got these kind of giant scratchy chunks taken out of it. What happened there?
So the moon is, again, another reason why we use the moon is it's immediately recognizable, right? And the Hive have occupied it, and they're burrowing and doing things under, at its core, and it's causing it to fragment and break. And so it was another one of those things that even at a distance in space, you kind of start getting this cosmic horror vibe a little bit, and that's kind of the Hive. And so like
moon's haunted.
Yeah, the moon is haunted. So telling that story, like breadcrumbing that in, even from orbit, is definitely the goal.
Totally. And of course, there's an actual picture of the moon. But when we look at these maps, I mean, you almost cannot tell that this isn't real. The level of detail is just stunning. And I was wondering kind of, are these craters we see, are these real craters that you've seen in images? Like, is this an actual place on the moon, or did you just use the lunar images as reference?
Lunar images as reference. We try to grab as much real world elements and place them. So some of these it's kind of it's comprised of a real and artistic license. And so, because a lot of it has to be hand built and handcrafted to get the normal maps or the height that you see on that surface. So there's a lot of hand work in there.
Totally. And of course, referencing real images, this right here is the beautiful Earthrise from Apollo 17. And when you actually do go to the moon, you can see that the Earth has phases. I stood in one place for a long time and just took screenshots every so often so I could make this video of just the beautiful Earth and the sky filling up over time. That's an incredible detail. And I love that you guys do this with your planets and really think about the orbits of moons around planets and what that would do in the sky. It's a really good detail work.
Yeah, the Skies team there's a lot of work that goes into, a lot of reference work. There's a lot of, everything you see is not, I think a lot of people think things are automated, but it is all hand painted. So all of those phases, the way the atmosphere changes colors, even on Earth, as the sun rises and sunsets, is based on real science. But then painted in, and every value is being typed in to be as accurate as possible. And so again, through the lens of Destiny, but to at least have that base of reality.
Right. I like this too. You've kind of thought about in the future, like there's going to be these satellites streaming around the moon, and this detail right here, I think might be my favorite kind of secret hidden Easter egg in all of Destiny. This is the lunar polar hydrogen mapper, which you can find in Destiny in one of the lost sectors. This thing hasn't actually launched yet. I believe its launch date is supposed to be later this year. It's going to look, orbit the moon and look for water ice. And if you actually do find it in the game, you get these beautiful extra, like emblems and stuff. Did you actually partner with NASA in order to create that?
Yeah, so those are actually based off the real Luna map logo that our concept artist Dima worked on to pay homage to it. And funny enough, like this, so Craig Hardgrove, during Destiny 1, Craig Hardgrove came out to give a talk on Mars, and I was working on Mars. So Craig and I were fast friends, kind of like talking about some of the stuff. He was looking at the geology, and we discussed that. And anyway, we become friends since then. So we've stayed in communication. And he's friends with myself and David Dade. And like June of 2019, David reached out to us and to myself and Rob Adams to see if we wanted to put the probe in. Like, can we sneak it in? It'd be so rad. And we're like, yeah, we should totally do that. So it was like the perfect time because it happened really quickly. We quickly got a bunch of people together. Like, can we make this thing happen? Can we get this into the game? And sure enough, we got it in. We got the emblem. Like I said, Dima, got the emblem in, and yeah, it was really fun. It was fun to be able, it's always fun to hide Easter eggs in our game. And especially, something like this, which totally speaks to kind of the love of science that I think a lot of us at Bungie have. And so it's a ton of fun.
I would love to ask you about all the other Easter eggs, but I want to make sure we look at all these other cool places. This next place is called Nessus. This one I think is really interesting because it's a type of object called a centaur, which I literally didn't know existed until I played Destiny. I have a full-blown degree in astrophysics, and I had never once heard of these things before. So thank you for educating me. But for people who don't know, a centaur, and I love this artwork, this is so funny. A centaur is kind of rocky like an asteroid, but icy like a comet. So they called them centaurs because they're kind of like, a man and a horse stuck together, but the actual data on Nessus is, I mean, it looks like this. It's grainy and we don't know a whole lot about it. So how did you take this data and turn it into, a map like this?
So it's a funny story, and it's funny that you say you didn't know what one it was, because I didn't either. And so this is one of those stories where I was saying sometimes it happens in reverse. So Nessus was actually being built as a passion project that kind of found itself being transformed into what you see today. And we found kind of a location for it. And I think it was, it may have been Mark Peters, one of our artists, wanted it to be a centaur. Just thought that was really cool because we don't really talk about that. And so that was just, it was a unique opportunity. And then the destination itself ended up being basically fully transformed by the Vex. Vex is one of our combatants, one of the enemies in our system, and they're kind of this computerized, mechanized race that can completely convert planets into their own data center or computer in a way. So what you're seeing is them fully converting a planet. And this was an opportunity for us to do this because on Destiny 1, when you remember Venus, there was a lot of Vex architecture there where they were slowly converting Venus. But with Nessus, we were actually making the bold statement of saying, no, they have fully converted. So what it used to be, is no longer, right? It is now it's a Vex destination. So
right. You can even see it's got, birds flying and stuff. I mean, they've really done some incredible things to this place. Another location, just a little further out, the Tangled Shore. And this one's kind of interesting to me because it's located in the asteroid belt, and it's kind of like this strange place where it's like asteroids and busted up spaceships and like, why did you kind of choose this location in the asteroid belt, and why didn't you just go build something on an asteroid rather than a whole desolate field full of destroyed spaceships?
Yeah, I think it started with, in the early days of Destiny, there was a bunch of concepts. So like we just let our concept artists just kind of ran wild, right? And they were just generating all these really amazing bits of imagery. And the belt was always like this whole area was always something that was really inspiring. And we touched on it in Destiny 1, but we never quite went there. Like you went to the social space, but you were never really there. And so for Forsaken, we definitely wanted to jump back into that area. And we also wanted to find a location that could, tell Destiny's version of the Western, if that makes sense. And it's something that could give us this desolation and the feeling of those ghost towns, like an outsider feel. Like it wasn't super familiar, and it did feel very chaotic and and restless, I guess.
I love too that like when you're actually in there and you look up at the the kind of ceiling of this like asteroid, there's all these little things hanging out the top. It just spent a lot of time there.
Falling and taking over.
Right. Well, I'm a sucker for beautiful, pretty, sparkly purple. So
Nice.
This place, the Dreaming City, it gets even weirder. The Dreaming City is very different from any of the other maps, I feel, just because of its history. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what is the Dreaming City?
Yeah, so with the Dreaming City, it started with a conversation with Christopher Barrett, who was our creative director at the time, and he had this idea of something that would really push the mystical and fantasy portion of the game. And so even if you stand in the Dreaming City out in our open areas, and you look one direction, you look the other, you get a nightmare on one side, which is over the city, and a beautiful dream on the other side. And that at the very beginning, we talked about that. We also talked about having a dreaming shore, an area that the Awoken, because this is the Awoken, one of the classes in the game you can play. This is like, a touch of their home world and their architecture, which we've previously not shown. And so we're really leaning into the kind of space elf vibe, right? And the whole space that they're on is actually this massive geode that carved out and created their cities in, and they actually use those geodes for their technology. And so it was the first time we really got to go deep into our lore and not really discuss exactly where the Dreaming City is, but it was an opportunity to really play into the high fantasy vibe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know, like it does feel really different every time I'm there. I can't say it's my favorite map because Europa is my favorite map, but it's like it's a close second. Plus I play Awoken. I love that race. Their history is so rich and there's so much lore there. Obviously I just mentioned Europa. So we're going to look at Europa, but I want to actually play a short clip of this video so we can listen to the music for a moment, because it's not just the beautiful artwork, it's the music that goes into it, and like the feeling of this game that just really it brings me back. It hurts me. It's so beautiful. Do you guys, I know you have these like loading maps where, your spaceships kind of come in. Do you just kind of keep these beautiful files without the ships so people can like use them as backgrounds around, Bungie?
We should. So that clip that I gave you is actually, I asked for this talk. I was like, hey, can we have it without ship? And now that I've seen that, I'm like, I want all of them. So I
Exactly.
can have it as like a background, or to figure out a way to have like an animated background. No, because those guys, they do such great work. It's always a pleasure to see their handiwork and how they're able to take these spaces and get them into the visual style that you see now.
Right. And I mean, Europa is just one of the coolest moons in the solar system just in general, but the level of detail you've gone into to really make it realistic, like you can see that this is an image from the game, but this is a real image of Europa, and they are just so stunningly similar. And I mean, up close, Europa is a really, really strange world. It's covered in ice and it orbits Jupiter. It's got a whole liquid water ocean underneath inside of this moon. And there might actually, I mean, we don't know, but there could be life living in this moon. So I've always kind of imagined what it would be like to go there and really kind of explore it. But Destiny is the first time I've ever actually gotten to go there and look up at Jupiter in the sky. I mean, look at that. It's just, I don't know. How do you feel about it? I know this is like the newest map. Do you feel like, you put a lot more detail into it than the other ones, or like it's extra special in some respect?
Yeah, our skybox artists actually wanted to. They were happy to revisit Jupiter because they wanted to give it another go. And so this is the most accurate representation we've done so far in our game. And trying to making sure that its rotation is correct, making sure that you can see the shadow on Jupiter itself. And yeah, there's a lot that went into trying to get that skybox. I mean, to the point that we also made sure that it was kind of the hero. No matter where you go, you're going to have a view of Jupiter in some capacity. So yeah.
Right. I really did appreciate that, because I know on maps like the moon, I had to go to places to find the right angle so I could see that beautiful, beautiful Earth. But everywhere you look in Europa, the sky is just gorgeous. And you sent me some kind of reference images, of ices and things you were looking at to kind of build out this Europa map. Where are these located in the real world?
That is a good question. We found there's way more. I grabbed a few of many of the reference that we were trying to pull from, because we looking at the surface of Europa, we know we have those large cracks, but we also knew that it was going to be very, very barren, and we wanted to grab some elements that gave it more dynamism, and also try to create areas where it's like, oh, well, you're going to see this visual more here than here. So it's not just all ice, because you can immediately just become very just isolating everywhere. You don't get those distinct locations. And so it was another way to tell our story and to show like the winds and weather across the Europa, which was something also new to our game for the first time.
Yeah.
And that previous concept you had was actually a very early concept of what Europa may look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
I really do love the weather detail on this map. Like, that moment where you can't see Jupiter anymore because the storm is just literally blowing your character back. That's just one of the most fun interactive parts of this map. You can frequently get yourself in trouble because you can't see where you're going. Another detail I really love is this kind of undulating red energy you can see underneath the ices. Did you do this because, from afar, Europa kind of has that, like, the cracks with the beautiful tinge to it, or what inspired this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, those images of those cracks on the surface, which I believe is salt, I want to say, I think that's what it was. We were thinking it was iron, but we were trying to figure out. Anyway, but yeah, that was a very distinguishable look, and so we wanted to lean in on that, and then actually kind of play into the Destiny fantasy of like, wait, what is that, right? And so yeah, just it keeps you curious and keeps you wondering, like, what you thought you knew maybe wasn't the truth.
Right, just looking down at the ice with all this creepy stuff underneath. It's awesome. And this has got to be just one of my favorite details in this whole map, like this little shadow of the moon on Jupiter. Like, you can actually see in real images of Jupiter. This is a composite of several images that were taken by Cassini, but you can see there this shadow of Europa. It's just awesome. I mean, are there any other moons on that map casting shadows onto Jupiter, or are we actually seeing the shadow of Europa?
I don't believe so. I believe that's that is a shadow of Europa.
That's awesome. And of course, like the phases of Jupiter are just, stunning as you actually like stand on the map. Like, you'll look up and it's just this crescent Jupiter in the sky, but not just that, the sunrises on Europa. How did you kind of figure out, what colors you wanted the beautiful sunrises to be?
Again, it all comes down to it's because our game is open and there's a lot of gameplay and elements that are happening at various locations in the game. There's a lot of thought that goes into the sunrise and sunset because of where shadows are going to fall, and so we want it to look as beautiful as possible, but we also have this other thing called gameplay that we want to make sure we don't break. And so there's a lot of thought on when we build these spaces and the complexity of them and knowing where that sun is going to rise and fall, and then the artistic license of, what would the atmosphere look like. And some of that's based on reality. On Europa, it was like, hey, let's have some fun. Dreamy City was, let's have some fun. Nessus is, like we get a chance to kind of like poke at areas that may not be as real as possible, but they give you these really nice sights.
And something I've been wondering, just because I am so looking forward to the Europa Clipper mission, flying through the plumes on Europa. This is some data from the Hubble Space Telescope, and you can see water is literally shooting out of this moon. Are there any water jets on the Europa map?
So gas vents our water vents were actually on the plate. We talked about that early on. Actually, Enceladus was another location that we discussed before it was Europa. And so, like, how you wrote the genesis of Europa actually was, we knew we wanted an ice planet. We haven't done that. We wanted to explore in that space. And Europa was always in the back of our minds, but we were kind of poking at a few other locations. And yeah, we considered many moons and many moonlets to be able to achieve that fantasy. But yeah, we have not done that yet on Europa. Mm-hmm. And the more I talk about Enceladus and cryo volcanoes, it does sound really rad. So
oh yeah,
maybe one day.
Maybe one day. I hope so. That would be so sweet. So of course, something that we haven't had a chance to put out on our social media yet is that the Europa Clipper mission, which is actually going to Europa, finally got a launch date. So they're going to be launching it in October 2024. So we're going to actually, see some more Europa up close, which just makes me so happy. There are a lot of locations on this map that are no longer in the game, but are just absolutely gorgeous. You know, you know, bad things happened. We had this fleet of evil pyramid ships come in, and you know, here we see Titan getting totally destroyed, basically. Um, so I'm sad they're gone, and I do wonder, like, are you going to bring back any of these maps, or you know, update them with things that you've learned, you know, since, like extra details like weather, like you did on Europa?
Yeah, I mean, I think as artists, we're always excited to return to these spaces. I'm not saying a definite what's going to happen, but I think as artists, you know, I would love to revisit Mars again. I would love to revisit Mercury again. Like, there's a bunch of spaces that, you know, have a personal soft spot for many of us, and so going back to them and kind of getting a chance to have another go at it would be a lot of fun. So if we get given the opportunity, we would be ready to do it.
Awesome. And we don't have a huge amount of time left, but I do just want to, you know, kind of share some of these beautiful locations. I mean, Io, the volcanic moon going around Jupiter. You got these beautiful volcanoes going on, sweeping views of Jupiter in the background. I mean, I had a friend actually tell me that she has nightmares about Jupiter just because it's so big. And she had this nightmare. She was on a moon of Jupiter looking up, and it was just too big and terrifying. And I think about it every time I'm on one of these maps. It's gorgeous.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the Titan map was really cool. I noticed though that, you know, like, this is what Titan actually kind of looks like, but you know, people took infrared, you know, looks underneath the atmosphere, and you know, produced this image, which is kind of tinted green. When you actually look at the Titan map, it does have this green tinge to it. Did you do that because of that previous image, or did you
Yep.
just, yeah?
Yeah.
So cool. And of course, you know, you can kind of see Saturn in the background, which is an obvious reference to these beautiful images from Cassini. Just absolutely stunning. I loved I loved this Titan map because of these methane oceans you've got going on.
Yeah,
Just
we wanted to tell. There's another moment to tell how humanity at one point had reached out before the collapse, which I don't think you mentioned. There was a collapse. That's why
yeah.
humanity's still not doing things in these planets, and you're discovering, you know, you're finding out what happened. But is another opportunity to show them harvesting or mining or doing something with the methane ocean. And so it's like a massive oil rig out
Mhm.
there, you know, in these oceans. So yeah.
Just seas of hydrocarbons. I wonder if we'll be out there someday doing that. And the Mercury map is just absolutely stunning because it's so close to the sun. You know, there are literally moments where your character has to hide in the shade or you will burn to death, which is just great. Um, Gosh, just all these alternate histories on Mercury, and just the blazing sun going around everything. But, you know, the reason we're really all here is because of Mars. And I miss this map so much. It was based on all these beautiful images you sent me. I mean, you all obviously did some incredible work researching Mars.
Yeah, we actually started with a lot, and I will butcher the names of some of these places because I'm terrible at it. But you know, some of the craters and the massive canyon or the valley that runs through Mars, we were like, hey, can we build it in the, because this is early days of Destiny, like early, uh, you know, pre-process kind of days. We're trying to see what we can build and what we can do and how large can we go. And so Mars for us, we try to do like one-to-one looking at some of those locations, but knowing the scale of those, it quickly falls apart. And so
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well, how can we take the composition and silhouettes that are familiar from imagery that was out there and bring them into the game? Things like Phobos, and we really brought Phobos in. Like, it's totally not where Phobos is, but we wanted to bring it in because the story there is the Cabal, which is one of their warfaring races, and
Hmm.
actually started building bases on it, and they moved it into orbit. And so, yeah, so some of those images, you'll see some of the feeling of what you saw from the reference being built into the space.
Hmm. I mean, we're at the end of our time, but I just have to ask you, you know, like, working on all these maps in space, has it changed the way you relate to space exploration at all?
Yeah, honestly, this game alone, like, I'm always looking for reference in video, you know, working on previous games, but this game has allowed me to start looking into the science more than I ever have before, and kind of going deeper and deeper, and like finding myself watching like every launch I can. And you know, I went and attended. I never I mean, I wanted to before, but it wasn't something I really wanted to do. And so I was there for the last shuttle launch, and like all these things have kind of driven me to, I don't know, be more involved. And it's been great. It's fun. There are fun rabbit holes to go down, right? And just reading multiple articles and seeing all the new imagery that's coming back has been fantastic.
Right. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Jason. I know we have to end this session, but maybe we'll all go to a space launch together someday in the future. That would be super fun.
Awesome. Yeah.
Seriously. Thank you so much, Jason. And a special thank you to Bungie for hanging out with us and allowing this whole thing to happen, and for creating this beautiful resource for us to all go explore the solar system together.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll see you at the next panel.
All right. Thanks to Jason and Sarah for a phenomenal panel. I had such a great time hearing what you had to say. Folks, be sure to add your photo of your coolest space object to our contest. The winner will be announced at our final session today, and you can use the Whova phone app to upload your own photo and vote. Coming up next, we've got a panel. Please click on the agenda to the far left and choose the session title to go ahead and get connected. Thanks so much and have a great rest of the day.